Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're taking an extraordinary journey back in time to one of history's most fascinating and restrictive periods for romance, the Victorian era. From 1837 to 1901, Queen Victoria's reign transformed not just Britain, but the entire Western world's approach to love, marriage, and courtship. Imagine a world where a single glance could ruin a reputation, where touching someone's hand was considered scandalous, and where marriage was more like a business merger than a union of hearts. This was Victorian England, a time of incredible contradictions, where passionate love existed alongside rigid social rules. Today, we'll uncover the secret codes, hidden meanings, and elaborate rituals that governed how people fell in love during this remarkable era. From the language of fans to the politics of dance cards, prepare to discover a world where romance was both an art form and a survival strategy. To understand Victorian courtship, we must first understand the society that created these elaborate rules. The Victorian era was built on three fundamental pillars: respectability, morality, and social hierarchy. The cult of respectability. Respectability wasn't just important, it was everything. Your reputation determined your entire future, especially for women. A single scandal could destroy decades of careful social climbing. This obsession with appearances created a society where every gesture, every word, and every interaction was carefully calculated. The separate spheres ideology. Victorian society believed men and women inhabited completely different worlds. Men occupied the public sphere, business, politics, and intellectual pursuits. Women were confined to the private sphere, home, family, and moral guidance. This separation profoundly influenced how courtship worked, as any interaction between unmarried men and women was seen as potentially dangerous. The class system Victorian England was rigidly stratified. The aristocracy sat at the top, followed by the growing middle class, and finally the working class. Marriage was one of the few ways to move between these levels, making courtship a strategic game of social advancement. The religious influence. The Victorian era was deeply religious, with strict moral codes governing behavior. The concept of fallen women and the emphasis on purity shaped every aspect of romantic interaction. Churches didn't just influence Sunday services, they dictated daily life. Victorian marriage was, quite literally, a marketplace. Let's explore how this market operated and why love was often a secondary consideration. The economics of marriage. Marriage was fundamentally an economic transaction. Families viewed it as a way to combine wealth, secure social position, and ensure financial stability. Love, while nice to have, was considered unreliable and potentially dangerous to good judgment. The dowry system. Every marriageable daughter came with a price tag, her dowry. This could include money, property, household goods, and sometimes even businesses. The size of a dowry often determined the quality of husband a family could attract. Poor families sometimes bankrupted themselves providing adequate dowries, while wealthy families used them to secure advantageous matches. Inheritance laws and entailment. The laws of inheritance heavily favored men. Women often couldn't inherit property directly, making marriage their only path to financial security. The practice of entailment meant that estates passed to the nearest male relative, leaving daughters dependent on finding husbands for survival. Charles Darwin's marriage list. Even the brilliant Charles Darwin approached marriage scientifically. In 1838, he created a famous pros and cons list about marriage. On the pro side, constant companion and friend in old age, better than a dog anyhow, and someone to take care of house. On the con side, less money for books, and terrible loss of time. He married his cousin Emma Wedgwood the following year, a decision that combined affection with social and financial compatibility. Marriage settlements. Before any wedding could take place, lawyers would negotiate detailed marriage settlements. These legal documents specified exactly what each party brought to the marriage and what would happen in case of death or, in rare cases, separation. These negotiations could take months and sometimes ended engagements when families couldn't agree on terms. The London season was the Victorian era's most elaborate matchmaking institution, NS. A months-long series of parties, balls, and social events designed to pair off eligible young people. The season's structure. Running from late spring through early summer, the London season coincided with Parliament being in session. Wealthy families would lease houses in fashionable London neighbourhoods like Mayfair or Belgravia, spending enormous sums to present their daughters to society. The presentation at court. Every debutante's season began with presentation at court to Queen Victoria herself. This elaborate ceremony required months of preparation, CAA, learning proper curtsying technique, acquiring the right dress and feathers, and securing the right sponsor. Only those presented at court could participate fully in the season's events. Almack's Assembly Rooms. No institution was more powerful in Victorian society than Almack's. This exclusive club was ruled by 7 patronesses, including Lady Jersey and Princess Leven, who decided who received the coveted vouchers for Wednesday night balls. Being denied entry to Almack's could destroy social prospects entirely. The ritualized schedule the season followed a precise schedule: morning rides in Hyde Park, afternoon visits and tea parties, evening dinner parties, and late-night balls. Each event served specific courtship purposes, from the relatively informal morning rides where conversation was possible, to the formal balls where dancing partnerships were carefully orchestrated. The Marriage Mart Society openly acknowledged the season's purpose as a marriage mart. Mothers strategically positioned their daughters, and fathers calculated the costs of elaborate presentations against the potential for advantageous matches. The pressure was enormous. Failing to secure an engagement during your first season labelled you as increasingly desperate with each passing year. No aspect of Victorian courtship was more crucial or more restrictive than the chaperone system. These guardians were the gatekeepers of morality and reputation. Who could chaperone? Proper chaperones were usually older, married women of unquestioned reputation. Often mothers, aunts, or family friends. They needed to be socially connected enough to navigate society's complexities while being trustworthy enough to protect their charges' reputations. The chaperone's duties. Chaperones did far more than simply observe. They controlled their charges' social calendars, approved or rejected potential suitors, monitored conversations, and even regulated the topics discussed. A skilled chaperone could make or break romantic prospects through strategic positioning and selective introductions. The rules of supervision. The rules were incredibly specific. An unmarried woman could never be alone with a man, not even her fiancé. Carriages required open tops or curtains drawn back. Private conversations needed to occur within sight, if not hearing, of the chaperone. Even walks in gardens required careful supervision. The chaperone's social power experienced chaperones wielded enormous influence. Lady patronesses at Almack's often served as chaperones for multiple families, using their positions to orchestrate advantageous matches. Some chaperones became legendary figures, known for their success in marrying off their charges to wealthy, titled men. Resistance and rebellion. Not everyone accepted chaperoning quietly. Some young women found creative ways to evade supervision: secret meetings in bookshops, coded messages through servants, or stolen moments during large parties. However, being caught could result in social exile and ruined marriage prospects. Since direct communication about romantic feelings was forbidden, Victorians developed elaborate systems of coded communication that turned courtship into an intricate dance of hidden meanings. The language of fans. The fan was a Victorian woman's most versatile tool for communication. The complexities went far beyond simple gestures. Fanning slowly, "I am married." Fanning quickly, "I am engaged." Fan placed on right ear, "You have changed." Fan twirled in left hand, "I wish to get rid of you." Covering the left ear with an open fan, "Do not betray our secret." Half-opened fan pressed to lips, "You may kiss me." Fan handled threateningly, "Do not be impudent." Carrying fan in right hand, "You are too willing." The fan language was so sophisticated that etiquette books devoted entire chapters to its proper use, and young women spent hours practicing the subtle movements that could encourage or discourage suitors. The elaborate language of flowers floriography, or the language of flowers, reached extraordinary complexity during the Victorian era. Every flower, every colour, and even the way bouquets were presented carried specific meanings. Popular flower meanings: red roses, passionate love; yellow roses, friendship or jealousy; white roses, pure love or secrecy; forget-me-nots, true love and remembrance; violets, modesty and faithfulness; iris, messages and valour; daisies, innocence. Pansies, loving thoughts. Honeysuckle, devoted affection. The complexity of combinations. The real art lay in combining flowers to create complex messages. A bouquet of red roses with ivy, fidelity, and baby's breath, pure heart, sent a very different message than red roses with yellow carnations, rejection, and striped carnations, refusal. Timing and presentation. When flowers were given mattered enormously. Morning deliveries suggested respectful interest, while evening presentations implied passionate feelings. The way flowers were presented, upside down, with ribbons of specific colors, or accompanied by particular greenery, all modified the message. Handkerchief codes. Even handkerchiefs carried meanings. Dropping a handkerchief, we are friends. Handkerchief to lips, I would like to know you. Twirling handkerchief around fingers, I wish to speak to you. Handkerchief to right cheek, yes. Handkerchief to left cheek, no. Victorian courtship followed precise stages, each with its own rules, expectations, and potential pitfalls. The introduction. No courtship could begin without proper introduction. This required mutual acquaintances willing to vouch for both parties' respectability. The introduction itself was a carefully choreographed event, often occurring at balls or formal gatherings, with specific words and gestures that communicated each person's social standing. Calling cards and social visits. After introduction, courtship progressed through the calling card system. A gentleman would leave his card at a lady's home, indicating his interest in pursuing acquaintance. If the family was receptive, they would invite him to call during specified hours, usually between 3 and 5 p.m. on designated days. The art of conversation. Approved topics for courtship conversation were strictly limited. Suitable subjects included weather, recent social events, literature, carefully selected, music, and art. Politics, business, personal feelings, and anything relating to physical attraction were absolutely forbidden. This created a challenge: how to determine compatibility while discussing only surface-level topics. The walking out stage. If initial visits went well, couples might progress to walking out together, carefully supervised strolls in public places like parks or fashionable shopping districts. These walks allowed for slightly more private conversation while maintaining public propriety. The gift-giving protocol gift exchanges followed strict rules. Early in courtship, only books, flowers, or sheet music were appropriate. Later, small pieces of jewelry might be acceptable. Expensive or intimate gifts were scandalous and could end courtship immediately. Each gift carried symbolic weight and social significance. Meeting the extended family. Serious courtship required meeting extended family members, each of whom could veto the relationship. This process often took months, as families carefully evaluated the suitor's character, finances, and social connections. Dancing was the heart of Victorian social life and the primary venue for romantic interaction, but it was governed by incredibly complex rules and social meanings. The hierarchy of dances. Different dances carried different social implications. The quadrille, the most formal and respectable dance, performed in sets of 4 couples. This was considered appropriate for all levels of acquaintance, and was often the first dance shared between new partners. The waltz, the most controversial and intimate dance of the era. The close hold required, though still at arm's length by modern standards, was considered scandalous. Permission to waltz with someone indicated serious romantic interest and required special approval from chaperones. Country dances. These group dances allowed for conversation and were considered safe for casual acquaintances. The changing partners throughout the dance provided opportunities to interact with multiple people in one evening. The polka, a lively, energetic dance that became fashionable in the 1842nd. It was considered less formal than the waltz, but more intimate than country dances. Dance cards and social strategy. Dance cards were small booklets listing the evening's dances, with spaces for partners' names. For young women, a full dance card indicated social success, while empty spaces suggested unpopularity. The strategic filling of dance cards was an art form, saving specific dances for particular partners, balancing social obligations with personal preferences, using dance partnerships to send social messages, managing the politics of refusal and acceptance. The significance of specific dances. The first dance of the evening established social precedents. The supper dance, usually a waltz, was highly coveted as it included dining together. The final dance often carried special romantic significance. Accepting it suggested serious interest in the relationship. Ball etiquette and customs balls operated according to strict protocols. Arriving order indicated social rank. Introductions required proper sponsors. Refusing a dance meant sitting out the entire evening. Conversation during dancing was limited and monitored. Post-ball calling was expected within 3 days. The role of dancing masters. Professional dancing masters taught not just steps but social grace. They instructed young people in proper posture, appropriate conversation, and the subtle social signals communicated through dance. The best dancing masters commanded high fees and could make or break social debuts. Written communication provided one of the few opportunities for private expression in Victorian courtship, but even love letters were subject to strict conventions and potential scrutiny. The art of letter writing. Victorian education emphasized letter writing as an essential skill. Young people learned specific formats, appropriate phrases, and proper etiquette for different types of correspondence. Love letters required particular care, as they could be used as evidence in breach of promise lawsuits. Coded language and double meanings. Since letters might be read by family members or chaperones, couples developed sophisticated ways of encoding deeper feelings within acceptable language. Seemingly innocent discussions of weather, books, or mutual acquaintances often carried deeper romantic significance, understood only by the correspondents. The postal system and privacy. The Victorian postal system's efficiency enabled frequent correspondence, but privacy was never guaranteed. Families routinely intercepted and read letters to unmarried daughters. Some couples developed systems using trusted servants or friends to ensure private communication. Famous Victorian love letters, real historical examples, illuminate the period's romantic ideals. Robert Browning to Elizabeth Barrett. Their correspondence, conducted secretly due to her father's opposition, reveals passionate intellectual and emotional connection developing through letters over months before they ever met privately. Prince Albert to Queen Victoria. Even royal courtship followed letter-writing conventions, though their correspondence shows genuine affection developing within formal constraints. Literary influences on romance. Victorian literature profoundly shaped romantic expectations. Novels like Jane Eyre, Pride and Prejudice, and later Wuthering Heights, provided models for romantic idealization while also critiquing social conventions. Popular romantic literature created tension between passionate literary ideals and restrictive social reality. Many young people struggled to reconcile their romantic dreams, inspired by novels, with the practical arrangements expected by their families. The progression from courtship to engagement to marriage involved elaborate negotiations and preparations that could take months or even years to complete. The proposal process. Marriage proposals required careful orchestration. A gentleman first needed to secure permission from the lady's father or guardian before proposing. This preliminary negotiation often involved detailed discussions of financial arrangements, living situations, and family expectations. The actual proposal, while seemingly romantic, was usually a formality following successful family negotiations. However, the lady retained the right to refuse, though social pressure to accept suitable offers was enormous. Engagement, customs and expectations. Engagements were formal contracts with legal implications. Breaking an engagement could result in breach of promise lawsuits, particularly if one party could prove financial damages or damaged reputation. Engagement rings and jewelry. Diamond engagement rings became fashionable after Prince Albert proposed to Queen Victoria with a diamond ring shaped like a serpent, symbolizing eternal love. The size and quality of the ring indicated the groom's financial status and the value he placed on his bride. The engagement period. Typical engagements lasted 6 months to 2 years, allowing time for negotiating detailed marriage settlements, preparing the trousseau, bride's wardrobe and household linens, finding and furnishing appropriate housing, publishing banns and arranging the wedding ceremony, marriage settlements and legal arrangements. Marriage settlements were complex legal documents specifying the bride's dowry and how it would be managed, the groom's financial obligations and provisions for his wife, inheritance arrangements for future children, provisions for the wife if she became widowed. These negotiations often involved multiple lawyers and could become contentious enough to end engagements. The trousseau tradition. Preparing a trousseau was a major undertaking requiring months of planning and significant expense. A proper trousseau included clothing for the first year of marriage, household linens and textiles, personal items and accessories, sometimes furniture or household goods. The quality and extent of a trousseau reflected family wealth and social aspirations. Victorian weddings were elaborate affairs that celebrated not just the union of two people, but the joining of families and the culmination of complex social and economic negotiations. Wedding, customs and traditions. Victorian weddings established many traditions still followed today. The white wedding dress. Queen Victoria's choice to wear white for her 1840 wedding to Prince Albert established the tradition. Previously, brides wore their best dress, regardless of colour. Wedding cakes. Elaborate multi-tiered cakes became standard, often weighing hundreds of pounds and featuring intricate decorations symbolising fertility and prosperity. Wedding photography. As photography became available, wedding portraits became important family records and social statements. The wedding ceremony. Religious ceremonies were the norm, with elaborate church services followed by wedding breakfasts, actually elaborate luncheons, for family and close friends. The ceremony itself emphasized the bride's transition from her father's authority to her husband's bride. The honeymoon concept. The Victorian era popularized honeymoons as a period for the new couple to become acquainted away from family interference. Popular destinations included the Lake District, Scotland, or for wealthy couples, continental Europe. Marriage reality versus romantic ideals. The reality of Victorian marriage often differed dramatically from courtship's romantic veneer. Legal status. Upon marriage, women became femme covert under law, meaning they had no independent legal existence. Their property, earnings, and even children legally belonged to their husbands. Sexual education. Most Victorian brides received little or no information about sexual relations. Wedding nights were often traumatic experiences for unprepared young women. Daily life. The rigid separation of spheres meant husbands and wives often lived essentially separate lives within the same household, with limited emotional intimacy despite legal unity. Conclusion. The legacy of Victorian romance. Victorian courtship created lasting impacts on Western romantic culture. Many traditions we consider timeless, engagement rings, white wedding dresses, formal proposals, originated in this era. More significantly, the Victorian emphasis on romantic love as marriage's foundation, despite their practical constraints, helped establish expectations that continue to influence relationships today. The elaborate codes, restrictions, and rituals may seem artificial to modern eyes, but they reflect universal human needs to create meaning, build anticipation, and establish lasting bonds within their society's constraints. Understanding Victorian courtship helps us appreciate both how far we've come in terms of personal freedom and how some fundamental aspects of human romantic behavior transcend historical periods. The Victorian era's greatest contribution may be its demonstration that even within the most restrictive social systems, human creativity finds ways to express love, desire, and individual choice. The secret languages, coded communications, and elaborate rituals show the lengths people will go to connect with each other, regardless of social obstacles. As we've seen today, Victorian courtship was simultaneously the most restrictive and most elaborate system of romance in Western history, a fascinating contradiction that created both beautiful traditions and significant human costs. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the complex world of Victorian love.